breathe in that assurance now. Now, as you continue to breathe in deeply and fully, breathe in life and exhale all thoughts that no longer serve you. Just let them go. Breathe in deeply and fully God's peace. And let go. Exhale all your anxiety. Allow yourself to breathe in God's hope. And exhale all despair. You keep breathing, and I'll say a word of prayer. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks and praise. We thank you for being God in the midst of tyranny and injustice for Black and brown people. We thank you for being God amidst a global pandemic. We thank you for being God in the midst of disorienting times and surplus uncertainty. We breathe in the knowing that you, God, are as present to us as the breath we're breathing. You are the breath of life. And for that, we give you thanks and praise. We honor you. We ask, God, that you would help us to know what it is to be still and know that you are God. Would you ground us, root us in your very being? God, now I ask that you would be life, be hope, be joy, peace of mind, courage, and every measure of provision needed to those who are viewing with me tonight. Would you go into every home and into every heart? And would you rearrange some things, the way we think and the way we see things? Help us to see with the eyes of Christ and with the mind of Christ. That we might find that the world is far more expansive than we had ever imagined. That there's far more to hope for than we could have ever imagined. That there's far more generosity and far more kindness and far more love and compassion for neighbor than we ever believed possible. Would you help us know that now? We breathe in your light and your love. We exhale all doubt, all chaos. We let it go. We ask that you would speak, Lord, to our hearts and minds tonight. In the name of Jesus, our ever-living Savior, our teacher, our comforter, our companion, and our beloved friend. Amen. So how does that feel? Take a deep breath. Let me know in the comments. Did you need that breath in that moment? Did you need a moment to ground yourself? Remember, you have your breath. and it is the breath of God present to you. So don't hesitate to stop, drop, and breathe. Sunday's sermon was entitled That Hope Can Be Born in the Wait. And we looked at Isaiah 40, and I'm going to reread it to you now. Isaiah 40, reading from the New Revised Standard Version, verse 28 through 31. And I invite you to keep breathing while I read. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He doesn't faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and he strengthens the powerless. Even youth will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. And so in Sunday's sermon, I gave you a number of points that I feel are just so clear to us in terms of our ability to wait, because the focus verse is verse 31. But those who wait on the Lord in the midst of COVID-19, but those who wait on the Lord in the midst of social justice uprising, but those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. Why? Because in the waiting, often there's a game plan for action giving. And so it's while we're waiting on God, it's in the time of waiting that we are often able to gain new insight, new instruction, new direction, a new course of thinking and being. And in the waiting, our strength gets renewed because we're going to be called into action, family. We're going to be called to vote. We're going to be called to serve. We're going to be called to stand. We'll be called to pray. In some cases, we'll be called to be silent when it's in our best interest. But we can be assured that whenever God is inviting us to wait on God, when God is inviting us to rest in God, to trust in God, there will be a time when we will be invited to take some action. So this waiting time is not stagnant. It is not when is this going to be over? That's one approach now. And there are times when I've taken that approach and it's exhausting. Wouldn't you agree? That hurry up and fussy kind of, I can't wait for this to be over with. When we invest our energy in that way, we're spiraling downward on the map of consciousness. But when we choose to acknowledge that the waiting time holds possibilities, and we are willing to stay open, to receive and to give God's love, when we're willing, we're spiraling up on the map of consciousness. We're garnishing our energies. It's so powerful because the fact that he uses the eagle in this passage is so really profound, because you see, the eagle knows how to move into the current and to operate in flow. Not in flattering and fluttering and flapping, but the eagle knows how to synchronize itself with the wind current so that it's allowing the wind to do the work of elevating it. Mount up with wings as eagles. But all of that happens after the waiting. And so if you recall, I mentioned that there are a number of experiences that can occur in the waiting time. You see, in the waiting time, there's time for rest. Rest in mind, body, and spirit. The breathing that I've asked you to do and to continue doing while we have Bible study. This breathing is a kind of rest. It's rest from anxiety. It's rest from allowing our minds to scare us to death. Yeah, how often do we scare ourselves to death with the worst case scenario, looking out into the future and condemning it with the same anxiety we're carrying right now? Waiting time is time for rest, for renewal. It's time for nurture. I said, name what you need. Notice what you need in your own heart, in your own sense of being. What do you need right now? And then provide it for yourself. And you might say, well, but I'm not able to travel. I'm not able to. You know what I found? You can travel in your mind. Some beach that you love to go to, take a deep breath. Close your eyes and remember being there. You say, well, I've never been there. Google the place. Look at pictures and breathe. And allow yourself to engage the experience as though it was happening right now. And if you'll smile while you do it, if you'll allow yourself to wonder about the experiences there, do you know the body will begin to respond in positive ways so that you really can nurture yourself by naming what you need? Then I said that it's a time to let go. Yeah, I mentioned letting go of stuff in your closet or in your house because sometimes when we have too much clutter in our space, it's representative of too much clutter in our being. So notice what you're noticing. I am really living towards a moment where I am only surrounded by things that when I look to my right, it gives me joy. When I see that thing on the coffee table, it gives me joy. When I see that thing on the wall, that picture, a piece of art, it gives me joy. It gives me life. So look around. What is it in your physical environment that you might need to let go of so that you can know and experience joy? I've thought about the closet because how often, especially for women, do we keep 4 or 5 sizes of clothes? Well, one of these days I'm going to get back in there. Okay. And so meanwhile, every time you go to your closet and you can't wear that size, and you can't wear that size, and you can't wear that size, then you create anxiety and frustration and disappointment. Why don't you let those feelings go and let those clothes go? Or whatever it is that you've been attached to, hanging on to, clutching. You see, the reality is the only real attachment we're called to have is to the presence of God abiding in us. It's freedom to get to a point where we recognize that nothing else really matters. That nothing else can give us peace of mind. Nothing else can give us contentment and joy like God can. Now, certainly there are things that can enhance it. Yeah. But notice what you're noticing. What do you really need in your space right now? What do you really want in your space right now? Waiting time is time for letting go. It's time to retool. I mentioned that. Time for getting new skills, perhaps. And when I say that waiting is time for rest and nurture and letting go and to retool, you may not necessarily need to do all of those. Maybe there's one particular idea that stands out for you. Retooling for me is one of the things I'm doing. I'm in 2 programs right now. One lasts for about 18 months and the other is a 2-year program. And I'm not in it to gain a certificate. I'm in it because I want a more expansive me at the end of COVID-19, at the end of this social justice uprising. I want to be a better Juanita. I want to love more deeply and more purely. I want to be more patient. I want to be more compassionate. I want to be a better neighbor, a better wife and friend. And I know that the way to do that for me is the fact that I love learning. And so I'm putting myself in two different spaces where I can retool. When I can, in one of the places I'm learning to live my more expansive self, to live into the me that God has been seeing since before I was placed in my mother's womb. And in one of the other spaces, I'm learning what it is to really investigate spiritual transformation, what it looks like when God transforms us, even in the midst of crisis, even in the midst of darkness and doubt, social justice uprisings, quarantines, and the like. So retooling. What does that mean for you? Maybe you've had your eye on the supervisor position or the board position, or maybe you've been thinking that this could be a good time to get your associate's degree. Whatever retooling looks like for you, get with God. Take some breaths and ask, am I being invited to retool, to train up for the next spot? And listen. And then do what you can, where you are, with what you have. Time to retool and to retrain. Additionally, in the waiting time, it's time for recreation. You know, my personality type is such that even when I was a kid, I was playing I was a grown-up, pretending to be the doctor, pretending to be the teacher, pretending to be the preacher. I was always playing the serious role, right? And so I'm learning the necessity of play, of recreation. When I was recovering from my time of depression, Pastor Ratliff at Brentwood Baptist Church called Rudy and told him, said, man, you guys need some recreation time. He said, you need to remember that recreation means recreating the self. And play is one of the ways you do that. So what do you like to play? I like to play a lot of stuff. I'm learning to play. My grandson is helping me with that. As we play chase, and he tells me to be whatever dinosaur he picks for me to be. And then he tells me, now chase me, Gemma, chase me. And I always want to chase him nice. Hello, Jaden. I am, what's the one? I always forget to say it right. It's Brachiosaurus. I'm Brachiosaurus. Brachiosaurus is a dinosaur with a really long neck. And I like to dance and be Brachiosaurus, right? He says, no, Gemma, be a mean Brachiosaurus. He's playing. And so he's using his imagination. Play invites us to imagine, to find new ways of being, ways of knowing joy, ways of knowing renewal and fun. And it invites us to engage our inner child. So I went and climbed a tree recently just because I wanted to. I'll try to remember to put up a picture of that. Probably be on my social media at some point. But play. What does play look like for you? You know what? What if you play dress up? When was the last time you played dress up? What if you put on the fanciest thing you have in your closet and you eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with it today? Why not? You are in charge, you know. So you can use this time for recreation and for playing. Time for reflection. I think reflection to me is one of the most significant, along with the last one, time for transformation. You see, what we have time to do is notice what we're noticing. We can notice during COVID-19. I did an article. You can see it on my social media, and you can especially see it easily on LinkedIn. It's called It's Not About the Cheese. It was one day that I remembered while I was reflecting on it. I cut myself 3 little slices of cheese, laid them on the counter on a paper towel. I turned to put the cheese in the refrigerator, and my dear friend and yours, Pastor Rudy, ate one of my pieces of cheese, and I almost chopped him up and put him in the blender. I realized something was wrong with me. I was so furious, y'all. I was like, why did he eat my cheese? If he wanted a piece, I would have cut him a piece. But his excuse is always, but it tastes better off your plate, baby. Fortunately for him, He had a phone call to attend to. And so he left the room. I say fortunately for him, but really, it was grace for me. Because in that moment, I just stopped and said, okay, Juanita, what was that really about? Why did you get so upset about him eating your cheese? You know he always eat off your plate anyway. It's only been 35 years of eating off your plate. So what's up? And then I realized, and I talk about it in the article, but the bottom line, it wasn't about the cheese. It was about all the feelings that were stirring up in me. And I'm the only person who can address my feelings. So reflection gives us time to notice what feelings are building up in us, feelings of frustration, feelings of grief from not being able to do the things that we are used to doing, not having a certain measure of freedom. And so after I sat and processed it, I said, okay, all right, so what this really was about working 24/7 with my beloved, whom I do love, but I'd never worked 24/7 with Rudy. And so it was learning to be. But I had to notice what I was noticing. That's what reflection is all about. Notice what you're noticing in your relationships. Notice what you're noticing in your finances. Notice what you're noticing in your longing, things you really want, and your discontentment, things that don't seem right, don't seem comforting anymore, don't seem life-giving anymore. Notice what you're noticing in your vocation. Notice what you're noticing. Reflection time is time to notice what you're noticing. Then lastly, I said in the waiting is time for transformation. And I talked about the caterpillar who builds the chrysalis and then goes into it and transforms, liquefies, y'all. Liquefies. And then after a period of time, what had been liquid, what had died to the old self becomes the most substantial self, transforms into a butterfly. This past spring, I had butterflies caterpillars rather, being transformed in their chrysalis, and I could see them day after day, how the chrysalis would change. It would start out really dark green, and then it would become black, and then it would begin to break open, and the monarch butterfly would begin to come out of it. So this is a time for transformation. And I want to say a little more about that dark place of transformation. Because you see, transformation can be a very dark place. It can be a place where there doesn't seem to be much light at all. But don't give up in the darkness. Because you see, the darkness is camouflage that keeps you safe until you can come out alive. While you're in the darkness, befriend it. Ask, what are you here to teach me? What is it that I'm supposed to learn in this darkness? Unfortunately, so many people see that darkness and they become overwhelmed by it and perhaps feel suicidal. And so I want to say to you, if that's you, reach out for some help. Call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. I'll try to remember to put the number up for you. And then also NAMI, every Tuesday night at 6 o'clock, the National Alliance on Mental Illness meets at St. John's. We have a small group there that meets. You're welcome to join that group. That darkness is not to destroy you. That darkness is there to give you the spaciousness you need for significant spiritual transformation. In learning to be, I talk about it as when I was a little girl and my daddy was teaching me how to ride my bike, and first I had training wheels on it. And then it got to a point where Daddy and I agreed there was probably time to take the training wheels off. Time to go to the next level of competency, the next level of capacity, the next level of being. So remember, in this darkness, that you're not alone, that this place can feel as though God has abandoned you, but God is very present, nearer to you than you can imagine. And I want you to hear me say that when they say it's darkest before the dawn, it's darkest before the new beginning. You see, I watched those chrysalises. They would start out green, and then they would get as black as the inside of my phone case. But it was a process. And then before you knew it, a number of days, I can't remember if it was a few days or weeks, would go by, and that butterfly would begin to poke its wings through and open up that chrysalis so that it could come out and emerge as a totally new being. I've been in that darkness before, and I want to say this to you about it. When you come out with a new kind of resolve about being the person that you know God has called you to be. I think so many of us experience the darkness of depression, which this kind of transformation is called the dark night of the soul. And what happens for us is we come to the place of depression and darkness often because we're minimizing our life to make people around us comfortable or happy or safe or contented. Not taking on risk, perhaps, that we really want to take, but we allow other people to talk us out of it. And so for me, I came out of that experience knowing that I could no longer keep giving myself away by constantly saying yes to things and not having healthy boundaries. And so know that this darkness is there to be your instructor, your teacher. And God is very present, instructing and teaching. So this can be a place where you feel overwhelmed by the darkness. It can be a place where you can feel abandoned by God, but know that God is ever present. This is a place where you might think you're losing your mind. And I'm going to tell you this, you are. Let me tell you what kind you're losing. You're losing the mind that set limitations for you. You're losing the mind that was always trying to please other people and get other people's acceptance and approval. You're losing that mind to be transformed and renewed in the mind of Christ. That's a limitless mind. You remember we talked about the map of consciousness and being willing is a higher level? Be willing to be transformed in the darkness. So every day, maybe you'll begin to affirm, I am willing to be transformed in this darkness. I am willing to accept this darkness and I am willing to be transformed in it. I am willing to be transformed in this darkness. In other words, I am willing to stay in this darkness until I come out of here a new Juanita, a new you. Be willing. You see, high above willing is awakening. It's the kind of consciousness that Christ had. And so allow your mind to be changed. Allow your perceptions to be changed. Allow God to illuminate ways of thinking and being that perhaps you'd never considered before the darkness. You see, this is the place where I said you have to affirm that I am. And so one of the statements you might say is, I am getting better and better day by day in every way. I always said, day by day in every way, I'm getting better and better. Even if you don't see any better, you keep speaking what you want, not what you don't want. Speak what you expect, not what is no longer life-giving for you. Speak what you want. The world was created by the word of God, and we have that same creative power in our word. So as I close, I want to remind you that the waiting time is a time where God can do God's most significant work in us if we're willing. If we're willing, God can use, or we can use this time and allow God to give us the rest that we've been needing, the nurture, give us the opportunity to let go, to retool, to know recreation and joy, reflection and transformation. And I want to close with these final words. How well will you wait on God? Don't waste this time in the waiting room. Don't kill time in the waiting room. Make this time count. Make the wait an investment in who you'll be in 2023. Out beyond this current conditions, circumstances, and situations. Out beyond your diagnosis, out beyond your decision or their decision for you. During the darkest days of my experience of depression, God spoke to me and said, Juanita, if you'll let me, I'll help you build a life you can live with. The text says, God will renew your strength. And then you'll mount up with wings as eagles. You'll be able to run and not be weary. And then you'll be able to walk and not faint. Know that I love you. I heard Thomas Keating say this: hope is the infinite mercy and power of God. Don't give up. No, I love you. And there's what? Say it with me. Nothing you can do about it. Make it a great one. Remember, on Sunday, we've got worship, 8 o'clock and 10, and at 12 o'clock, it's on KMAZ, amazing 102.5 FM, the Bread of Life station. I hope you've had a life-giving time this evening. Know that I'm so grateful that we were able to be together, and I'll look to see